Andy, my dude, have you heard of the magical website builder known as Squarespace?
Ugh, not another Squarespace ad. I feel like every podcast is sponsored by them.
Hey, don't knock it till you try it. Yes, okay, it is overhyped, but actually it lives up to the hype. Squarespace is like a website fairy godmother. With a click of a button, your site transforms into a beautiful masterpiece.
A website fairy godmother? That sounds interesting. What makes it so magical?
Well, for starters, those slick templates make anyone look like a professional web designer. Pick one, customize the colors and fonts to match your brand, and voila. Plus, the drag and drop fluid engine is so easy, your grandma could build a site on Squarespace.
Well, she did knit me a lovely scarf last Christmas. Maybe website design is next.
Exactly. And when you're ready to sell your Nana's handmade scarves online, Squarespace has built-in e-commerce. Add a store with one click. Get flexible payment options. Then watch those sales roll in. And when she wants to teach others her steezy scarf skills, Squarespace's new courses feature is just the ticket. Nana can set up her curriculum and enrollments and payments in a snap and become the next e-knitting influencer.
Oh, wow, you really sold me with the grandma angle. Sign me up for that free trial.
Just go to thenextreel.com/Squarespace and transform your site into a beautiful Squarespace masterpiece.
Well, thanks, Pete. Even though it's overhyped, Squarespace actually sounds perfect for Nana's site's needs. Appreciate the warning on the ads, though. I'll brace myself next time I listen to a podcast.
Anytime. Let me know if you need any help getting that site up and running. Andy, can you believe we've almost hit 700 episodes of The Next Reel?
I know, it's crazy. And with all the other episodes in our family of podcasts, we are well over 1,200 episodes of movie conversation. It's really pretty amazing that we've gotten to have these in-depth movie chats every week for over a decade now.
And we couldn't have done it without our loyal community of film fans. Their support over the years has meant so much.
For sure. That reminds me, we should give the merch store a shout out. Buying shirts from thenextreel.com/merch is a great way listeners can continue to support the show. Plus, they get to sport our great designs.
Absolutely. I think sometimes folks forget we have a variety of shirts, mugs, phone cases, and more available. In fact, a great place to start is with a shirt sporting the Next Reel's logo.
We also have that classic Fast Times Spicoli Surf School tee, or the weirdly popular Rusty's European Tour shirt.
The one from National Lampoon's European Vacation. Why is that so popular?
Search me, but we have sold a ridiculous number of those. I guess there are a lot of Rustys taking trips to Europe?
We're always adding new designs based on movies we've covered, like our brand new design for a streetcar named Desire, featuring a streetcar named Desire. So if you want to rep your love of TNR and films, head to thenextreel.com/merch.
Every purchase helps us continue to have these weekly in-depth conversations. So visit thenextreel.com/merch today.
And as always, thanks for listening and being a part of the Next Reel community. We've got lots more great movie chats coming your way. I'm Pete Wright.
And I'm Andy Nelson.
Welcome to The Next Reel. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy is over. It's time for a long swim across a cold river.
I'm retired. There's a mole right at the top of the circus. He's been there for years.
I need you to do something. You have to assume they're watching. If you're caught...
What the hell are you doing up here?
You can't mention me.
He's a fanatic, and the fanatic is always concealing a secret. Hello, Ricky.
I needed to see you.
Why?
There's a woman.
I know who you are.
She had information concerning a double agent. What she told me was sensational.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, Andy. We're finally here. We're at the Tink Town. And
where we are. Is that what they call this part of the world? Tink Town.
Welcome to Tink Town, Andy. I'm pretty excited to talk about this movie. Do you remember last week when you talked about Drummer Girl?
And how?
Aren't you relieved that we made it
It's yeah.
I know there were parts of that conversation where we were ready to hang up podcasting altogether. Just we're done.
We've talked about worse movies. It wasn't the worst movie we've discussed on the show.
Okay,
it definitely has its issues.
It has some issues there. It has some issues, but this one is a very different take on the Jean le Carré adaptation of the original film Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. It is the number 5 in the George Smiley books out of 9 in that series, as it has been repackaged and rebranded, I guess. I have not read, I think, any of them, I don't think. And this has been a delightful formal introduction to George Smiley. I was listening to an interview between Mark Strong and our man Gary Oldman, and Oldman says this movie, this part, like it's scary to get this because it's like an actor being called to play Hamlet. Like there's some intensity, there's a lot of baggage to this role. He says there's a dragon in my head about Smiley, where most dragons live, in your head, and that dragon's name was Guinness. Alec Guinness, who is in the miniseries, he played the role of George Smiley and really defined the part. So there is a sense of seriousness, a sense of sobriety that they bring to both Smiley and to this film. And I would love to know, Andy, what you thought of it.
I really enjoy this film. I find it to be an incredibly strong kind of complex weaving of a tale that has a lot of different layers, a lot of pieces in place. I mean, I think it's apt that some of the characters, the particular ones that Control thinks might be the possible mole, has their picture and name taped to chess pieces. And I found that to be a very apt way of kind of setting this world where you have these different chess pieces that are all moving around, and it's not just the 5 guys that are the part of the circus, the British secret intelligence that where they all are the head people at, but you also have all of the other pawns and pieces that are in place, like Jim Prideaux. You have Peter Gwilym, Ricky Tarr. And they all have different elements of the story that are kind of working together or against each other. And trying to kind of piece it all together really makes this to be kind of, a lot of people consider the book like the ultimate in spy novels, the really kind of the peak of that complex sort of spy fiction genre that is not sensational like the James Bond books, still weaves a complex tale of spies trying to puzzle through the whodunit and everything. And I find that it works incredibly effectively. And it's interesting coming into this after having I saw this first, then I watched the Alec Guinness miniseries, and then I rewatched this. And so finally being able to kind of piece it all together and see Guinness as Smiley, I can definitely see why Oldman feels that way about him. I mean, I think he really commands the role very well, the kind of that quiet strength of a presence of character that Smiley has. He definitely exudes that in that previous version. I didn't see the Smiley's People, which was the sequel, with Guinness, but I imagine it's just a lot more of the same. And I think that he, because of those the roles in those 2 miniseries, I think definitely deserves to be kind of recognized as the one who created the real on-screen version of that particular character, even though, as we discussed in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, there were other versions on screen before.
Sure.
But this one, it's just an incredibly strong film, really, I find, really well told for a complex story in a pretty tight time frame. And it's gripping and thrilling with a fantastic cast and wonderful period look.
I think that's fascinating when you look at when you compare the 2 adaptations, right? The what is it I don't know. I don't want to spend too much time talking about Drummer Girl, but I feel like there is a parallel to be made, and Drummer Girl broke it, which is, when you look at the adaptations of material that lead to successful, movie or television properties. What is it you think that Tinker Tailor got right in these properties that Drummer Girl got wrong when it came to adapting? Or I should say, the first Drummer Girl got wrong when it comes to adapting Le Carré. We've talked about how hard he is to adapt, the density, the complexity, all of that goes into his pieces that makes it so challenging.
Well, I think that the first thing, there's a totally different type of story being told between these two films. This one is definitely a spy story. You've got all of these spies, and they're trying to figure out, Smiley in particular is trying to figure out who the mole is after this mission goes awry. And just kind of watching him puzzle through it, I think is an effective kind of telling of that story. In The Little Drummer Girl, it's less about the spies. It's a pretty straightforward story. And really, it's kind of a character story of a woman who goes undercover, and you follow her in this undercover world as she kind of gets into this Palestinian group and tries to, basically is tracking them for the other side. It's not as complex a tale to weave, but I feel like, and this is again just all part of that first element, it's the type of story is dealing with a lot of complex political viewpoints, and I don't think that the people telling that adaptation had the strength in their storytelling skills and their directing skills to weave a tale that gave the different viewpoints the what they needed in order for that story to make sense. And so it's a different type of story. And I think that's the first issue that I found with that particular story. And then the second I already alluded to is just the fact that I don't think that they really had the right team behind Little Drummer Girl. I think Park Chan-wook, when he came in, really had a much better handle on it. And yes, he had more time to tell his version of the story, but it's incredibly effective. Whereas in the film that George Roy Hill did, I just don't think George Roy Hill was the type of director who knew how to handle a complex story like that with the way that the characters needed to be portrayed. I just don't think he was the right man for the job. And on the flip side, with this particular film, I think you had writers and a producer who were behind this from early on, who kind of knew how to adapt this complex story, but in a condensed way. And then Tomas Alfredson as the director, I think he was exceptional with the way that he put it together. So I think it just all boils down to the type of the story and the teams.
We've already lashed out on Drummer Girl in a number of different ways, and I have yet to watch the miniseries, the Park Chan-wook miniseries, but I'm excited to do so now. I'm even more excited to read these books because I feel like this is a movie that actually invites you and encourages you to read the book even more if you enjoy the movie. Right. I mean, sure. I feel like they were able to pack in an incredibly dense number of characters, a dense story that it sort of unspools over this 2 hours and 7 minutes, that in spite of its silence still has an incredibly kind of serious energy to it. Right. Something that just it propels you through. You're just watching people walk around with briefcases, and yet it just propels you scene after scene. I didn't find myself getting bored with it at all. I mean, if anything, I mean, I just the second I started watching it again late at night, and I didn't want to pull a full Andy. And so as soon as I felt like I was tired, I'm turning it off because I want to protect my space with this movie. I want to protect my attention because I find it so just sort of gripping. And we come at it in an interesting place, right? I mean, this is or an interesting time. This is not in these gentlemen's lives, this is not really the heyday of their spy career in terms of control and Smiley. This is at the very end, right? They're essentially bringing in this man from the outside, Smiley, who's been retired. Bringing him back to do this job is bringing back the elder statesman, right? It's Harrison Ford in Indiana Jones 6. Probably not an apt comparison.
Wow. Way to sell it. Yeek.
But you got to get a sense of where this could have gone so wrong. I think so much of this is built on the performance of Oldman as Smiley, and just what he is able to do on screen with everybody with so little. I mean, the nuance of his performance is just stunning. And yet he is in so much control.
Although he's not control.
Although he's not control. He's only in control. And I don't mean John Hurt.
Gary Oldman is just so mesmerizing in this film. He's so quiet and so controlled in every element of his performance. The moment that really stuck with me this go around was the moment when they were visiting with one of the new guys that they were bringing on to be an addition to his team. It's he's with Peter Gwillem, and they go to the guy who's keeping the bees. I can't remember who this guy is. And you see him kind of checking his bees. And then the three of them are now in the car, and there's a loose bee. And the driver kind of bats him away. Peter Gwillem kind of bats him away. And then it flies over to Smiley, who his reaction is to just slowly roll the window down, let the bee out, and then slowly roll the window back up. It was just so calm and quiet. And I'm like, wow, that just exudes everything as to who this guy is, right? He just doesn't let anything bother him. He analyzes it. He attacks it in the right ways and gets the job done. It was incredibly smart. And I can't help but feel every time I watch this film how Gary Oldman doesn't even sound like himself. It's like he just takes on this entirely different persona.
Yeah.
It's really a genius performance.
I find it incredibly aspirational, right? I used to want to be the superheroes, right? When I'd watch movies, or Han Solo or Indiana Jones, right? I'd watch a movie, I'd be like, deep in the back of my mind, I could still pull that off. Not anymore. Now I want to be the guy who can say so much with so little.
Yeah.
The scene you mentioned, the bees, I think is a perfect example. The one for me is when Tom Hardy, Ricky Tarr, comes in or he's sitting on the couch. And Gwillem, played, I think, brilliantly by Benedict Cumberbatch, comes in and just starts pounding on him in the living room. And there is no sense of shock. Oldman, as Oldman, Smiley just sits there, and all he does is this tiny nod to their third beekeeping compatriot, right? It's just, he nods to him and goes over and separates the fight. But at no point does Smiley react to get involved. At no point does he seem engaged in the fact that there is so much physical violence going on in the room, that his friend Ricky Tarr has been hurt and is nursing a wound. Like, at no point does any of that happen. He is just so very in control of himself. And I now, at this point in my life, I find that's the character that I'm aspiring to. I no longer need to fly. I don't need to be invisible. I don't need any sort of, I don't need a leather jacket. I just need composure. I aspire to composure. And how things change.
Of course, if you could fly, that wouldn't be a problem either. But
I mean, I would love to fly and have composure. So what? Come on, are we kidding? Interesting use of eyewear, don't you think?
I definitely like that fantastic 70s pair of specs that he's got, and it's as much of a character as he is, I think.
Well, it is, and I particularly love the way they use his glasses as a tool. Early on in the film, he goes and gets new glasses. And this becomes a tool in the film that allows us to key in on when we are in flashbacks and when we are in the main narrative of the film, and I thought that was so elegant. I didn't quite see it coming. It took me a while to notice it, because when we keep flashing back and forth to that Christmas party, right? I mean, some of the scenes take place out in a hallway, some of the scenes take place kind of in a yard, and I think this is one of those little anchor pieces that allows us, through the character design, the production design, to remind us that, oh, he's got the different shaped glasses. This must be some time ago now. We're in a different time period. That plus his little nods, the way Goldman uses his head, Oldman, we call him Goldman.
Goldman.
The way he uses his head to kind of look at the past. I don't know if you noticed this, but I found it really touching. Whenever he's having a memory, he looks like over his shoulder. He'll look in a different direction, as if he's looking at history in his own sort of mind's eye. And I found that a really touching sort of performative tool.
Well, that's an interesting thing to bring up, because I had written a note. There's a point in the film when Control dies, and that's done in a very similar way to what you just described. It's not necessarily the past, but it is some other element within his life that he's paying attention to. He's walking down the street, and you hear the sound of something break, and he turns and he looks across the street, but kind of continues walking. And then it cuts to a hospital room where you see Control in his hospital bed, and he has died. And in the process, he had knocked off like a plate that he had on his lap, and you see it shattered on the floor. That's the sound of the thing that had broken. It obviously wasn't what Smiley had been looking at from the street, but it's a very interesting and effective way for Alfredson to craft this story, where he's blending scenes together in such a way where we're moving through very effectively, getting all these different pieces and this information into the audience's head so that they understand everything going on, but allows for that condensing to happen. It's very smart.
Was there any sort of malfeasance to the death of Control that I missed?
No, he just died.
He just died.
Yeah.
Okay.
Part of it is I think, he's just, and I think, I can't remember if it was in the, I feel like if you're not remembering, then obviously it must have been in the miniseries. I feel like there actually was a line in there about them asking, or somebody asking, if anything had happened to him, and asking Smiley about that. And I think Smiley just says, nope, he just happened to die of old age, sort of thing. And,
I must have missed it if it was in there.
I think it must have been in the miniseries. I feel like there's a scene, a pretty lengthy scene in the beginning, when a character from Smiley's past connects with him in the street and kind of drags him into a bar to have a drink with him. And he's just I want to call him a flibbertigibbet. He's just one of these talking guys who just won't stop asking questions and having this lengthy conversation all night long with Smiley in this bar. And it was a great way to get a lot of exposition about all this stuff that's been going on with Smiley and with the circus since he and Control had been ousted.
We don't get a lot of flibbertigibbet characters in this movie. It is a stoic sort of film in the hands of Alfredson. How'd you feel about the pace?
I think it's really effective. I think it's one of those films that you definitely need to be paying attention to from the beginning. You can't, it's a hard one to get up and walk out and go to the bathroom and come back and feel like you can catch up pretty quickly. Like, I don't know how, I don't know how well that would work. Because,
it's remarkable because it feels like it moves kind of slowly early on. And so I wouldn't be missing much if I got up and went to the bathroom. And yet you miss a lot if you turn your head.
Absolutely. I mean, in miniseries, the entire first episode is really the story of Jim Prideaux as he goes to Hungary to figure out, to try getting a hold of this person who might have information as to who the spy is, or the mole. And that's the entire first episode. And you're watching him as he gets shot in the back and everything. This film takes that entire story and gets it done in less than 7 minutes. And so, but I felt like, I didn't need all of that setup. It's really interesting. There's a lot of additional interesting elements that happen in the longer version, but in the context of telling a film, but in the context of telling the story in a film that is only 2 hours and 7 minutes long, I think that they found the right places to squeeze, to condense. We didn't necessarily need all of that of Jim's journey to Hungary to deal with that defection. It just was enough of a setup to allow us to get a sense as to what's kicking the story off, and then to later give us a sense as to why he is now kind of teaching and what is going on with his world at that point.
I don't think Oldman has a set of 2 sentences together until an hour and 12 minutes into the movie, when he's sitting down and having that conversation about Carla. And it's right in the middle of the movie. I think he is written as a true stoic in the film.
Yeah, he first speaks about 18 minutes in, but it's just the one line where he says, "I'm retired, Oliver. You fired me."
Yeah.
And there's not much after that. It's written in a very kind of stoic way, like you said. Yeah. And I find as the story progresses and you get more and more of him, it just becomes really fascinating to listen to him kind of lay the pieces out that he's solved and put things on the table.
I want to read this brief passage from an interview with Tomas Alfredson on his perspective on silence and working on this film, and in particular Let the Right One In from 2008. He is from Sweden, and so he's working on these films as a foreign language director, right? He's working on this as a foreign language film. So he says, "Working on a foreign language film forced me to find different expressions besides the lingual. We tried to do that with Let the Right One In as well, to do it as a silent movie, where the dialogue adds just a poetic layer to the story. You could actually turn off the sound on Let the Right One In and understand what happens. It wouldn't be possible with this film, but I try to create as much silence as possible. Too many films, at least for me, I know what's going to happen in every scene. It's so boring to watch things where everything is clarified. The most interesting thing is to create a dialogue. I give you 10 suggestions for this scene. Work it out for yourself." I find that it's really refreshing to read the director's sort of ideological or cinematic worldview and then be able to see that he really does pull through, right? I hear his intention and I can see it on screen. I feel from the very opening sequence you're talking about Jim Prito going to Hungary, I get a sense of me just sort of puzzling through. What could this be? What could be going on here? What am I waiting for to happen next? My goodness, why isn't he running? Why isn't he running when all those waiters and restaurant people are standing up and pointing guns at him? Why are they still shooting? I hear with just a few words that he allows kind of on in the film, and I have filled in a lot of blanks, and I find that an incredibly engaging experience. And I think that's one of the tools that he is able to use so adeptly to keep us engaged, even when there isn't a lot going on in that first hour, when it feels like it's just a lot of detail and passing hands and watching people kind of relate to one another. In that way, he forces me to be engaged by sort of writing the emotional script in my head for the film as I watch it.
I think that does say a lot about kind of the pacing and the structure and just how things unfold. It's smartly put together. And I think by allowing for that, it creates this atmosphere that where Smiley doesn't have to talk for a lot of the film as things kind of unfold, and he's the observer. And it allows for him to build a crescendo of his character as he starts talking more and more. And then you get toward everything in the end, and you really kind of see all his the puzzle pieces clicking in his head. One of my favorite scenes is when he's talking to, I'm going to forget which one it was. Was it Bland? I can't remember which one it was, but it's Esterhaus. He's talking to Esterhaus
on the airfield.
Airfield.
Yeah.
And the plane's coming down, and it's just that incredibly long lens shot, and it's just it creates like so much tension, and you just have a scene with Smiley talking to Esterhaus in that moment, and it just works brilliantly.
Well, and that he ends up turning Esterhaus, and that he is just, that Esterhaus ends up just begging, please don't send me back there. Please don't send me to leave. I am loyal. That is, ends up being one of the more powerful sequences in the movie, because you feel like that plane, that looming threat, he really does let it loom by using that incredibly long lens and watching it just come into focus so close to them. You know, I'm left thinking, I know this isn't the kind of movie where this guy Smiley is going to, assassinate by propeller, but it kind of feels like he could.
Right.
So,
yeah,
I found that incredibly powerful. I had this thought that this would be an interesting film to talk about with regards to the Cold War, and to look at the filmmaker and what he is most interested in why he would kind of jump on board to this story and adapting it. And what is it about this film that, to me, I'm watching it and it's so resonant to today, right? What is it that makes Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy stand up to history, that allows us to see kind of its importance? And I'm thinking about all those things, and I'm thinking, gosh, I bet Andy has a really strong opinion on that too. And then I read the first line of this interview with Alfredson, and it says, how is this film about the Cold War relevant today? And his response, I'm not really interested or educated in the Cold War, nor vampirism.
Okay.
Well, I will finish that passage because he does go on to clarify his point. But I'm curious how the Cold War hit you as a child of the 70s and 80s yourself. He continues, for me, it's trying to find stories that are suitable for film and that make you shiver. For me, this was a story about faith, to be faithful, and a nuanced look at friendship and fidelity. So the Cold War thing, it's an interesting era and a period and a good backdrop for a story because it's very black and white, but everything in front of it is kaleidoscopic.
It's funny because when you say that, I feel like when I look at this film, I don't watch it as a Cold War film. Like, I watch it as a spy film. I watch it as kind of a character story, but largely it's this puzzle that I'm watching Smiley put together over the course of the 2 hours. And I don't think of it as a Cold War film, even though it obviously is. But I feel like there's a lot less of Cold War in this film than there is in The Spy Who Came In From the Cold. Maybe that's because the bulk of that film has our protagonist dealing very directly with the other elements on the other side of the wall, and he's going undercover to be there. In this particular film, it's really we're with the master as he's trying to find these pieces to figure out the puzzle so he knows who the mole is. Obviously, that ties into the Cold War, but it just doesn't strike me as a Cold War film. Like, we're never dealing with the Russians. We're only hearing of Carla through a story. And I just don't feel like that I guess I don't come to it with that perspective. So to that end, I kind of agree with him. I feel like there's a lot less of this as just a straight up Cold War film as there is a spy film, as there is a film dealing with relationships and fidelity. I think that ends up coming into play a lot more.
Do you get a sense that the miniseries was more of a Cold War story? Or was it just not even? Is it not even the story that you're saying is?
No, it's more than this. I mean, we see Carla. By the way, Carla in that is played by Patrick Stewart. So I will forever now picture Patrick Stewart as Carla. Even in there, I mean, there's more stuff that you're seeing on the other side, but like there's a little more with Irina, and so I feel like there is Cold War stuff, but I feel like it's just, you're dealing with so much this mole side of things that I feel like it doesn't feel as much Cold War, even though it obviously is, even for the miniseries.
Yeah. Here's an interesting thing for me in this movie that I feel like, and I'm with you, I should say, as an aside, that I don't see it as much of a Cold War film, certainly as other films of the era that are kind of celebrating the sort of Cold War period. But I do think that there is an interesting transition of power that is going on in that gold soundproof room, right? In the vault, controls vault, which is the transition from an MI6 or the circus being an intelligence operation to a political operation. And in many respects, what we get in this movie is the push-pull between those ideologies, right? That we can use this as not just as a way to protect king and country, but as a way to manipulate others, and as a way to manipulate our own, and as a way to consolidate power. And I think that's what Control is trying to keep from happening. And when we get these guys in the room and see how easy this political machine can be manipulated by the Russians, what we get in this film is actually Smiley rescuing the heart of the circus, right? By the end of the film, Smiley takes the captain's chair, so to speak, and he is seen as sort of the last breath to me of what I now know was the intelligence operation, and now has become a straight up clown show in modern intelligence gathering. Like, it's just, we know how this ends, or we know where it goes at least, and it's not great. And so I really like that this film sort of in that office celebrates those two sort of competing directions. And it makes me all that much more curious about what he does in the book. So,
yeah, it's interesting. I didn't know this, but the CIA, our own Central Intelligence Agency, they actually do reviews of properties that deal with intelligence in literature and arts and stuff like that. And I was looking at their review of this particular film, and it's interesting to see how they kind of look at it and break it down, and the portrayals and accuracy and all that. And their focus is, does the film realistically portray the British Secret Intelligence Service or any other major Western intelligence agency? Is the movie likely to alter or reinforce popular perceptions of intelligence in general, and the CIA in particular? And then, of course, they're doing comparisons between the novel and the miniseries and the movie. It's interesting to kind of look at their take on all of this, and in the end, they really feel like this particular film, it's unlikely to change public perceptions, because there are still a lot of things that fit in context of movies and storytelling that still, according to them, don't make sense, aren't how things are. And it's funny because their perspective is largely that, you know what, there's still so much red tape, and there's still, all of these top level people aren't going to be the ones going out in the field. They're going to be the ones who are delegating it to underlings. And all of this paperwork and all of these sorts of things that you have to do, it doesn't allow for this lone investigator to be trying to solve the crime and stuff like that. And so I think it's funny because it seems like it's gone even farther from what you were just describing, of kind of from intelligence to political. And it's now just like so bureaucratic that I think that it's just, now that's how the processing is.
Wow. Gross. So gross. But it does make for an interesting film. And to that point, the thing that stands out to me is that this is a film with a lot of people, and yet it still makes, it still makes such, I think, effective use of him as this lone wolf. I do believe it, in spite of what the CIA says. I do believe that there would have been an opportunity in that period for him to just, play the goof on MI6 and be able to get away with, the duty log and sneak it out in, in a stack of newspapers and a briefcase. And like those things, I found those incredibly believable, so. Well,
and also, I mean, they call him, kind of his lone wolf escapades and stuff. But I mean, he really isn't. I mean, he's working with Gwillem and the other guy. He's got his little Mission Impossible team. He's working directly with the people kind of above, I guess you could say, the circus, with Laken and with the minister. And so he's kind of, there are a lot of people who are aware of what's going on. He's just kind of the guy that they shove into it to do all the work.
There's a point in the second hour where the movie becomes just I had to pause it and sort of, people were talking behind me, and I had to pause it and I had to say, shut up. Do you realize what just happened here? Like, this movie went from telling us a part of history to telling us about our present right now. And it is the conversation, I think it was between Smiley and Gwillem, or not, it was Smiley and the chief in the parking garage, the meeting that never happens. And they start talking about how Smiley lays out that this wasn't even about the Russians getting information on the Brits. It was about the Russians using the dumb-witted Brits as a way to get an inroads with the Americans. And my heart sunk so deep in my chest that I had to stop and take a breath. Do you get a sense of the weight of that moment? Was it used effectively here, or was it too heavy-handed?
No, I don't think so. I mean, I don't know. Maybe all the Spike Lee has just affected me. No, this is nothing.
There's no heavy-handed anymore. Spike Lee has ruined it for everybody.
He owns that. No, I didn't feel it was. If anything, I felt the film handled that pretty effectively in the way that it kind of laid all of that out. And, it's one of those films where it's so expository and there's so much just back and forth as to the perception of things that it can be something that you really have to be paying attention to quite a bit to really get everything going on in the film in this shortened version for sure. And so I think it helps just having stuff like that, like when he says it, because it fits the exposition. It obviously fits and makes sense with the way that he's laying it out to the minister, and the fact that it's all the minister's fault anyway, because he's started this whole thing. And I think having that in there is it's just, I don't know, it didn't.
Sometimes we just need you to say it out loud.
Yes, exactly.
Just tell me what I need to know.
Yes. I thought it was fine. But I to that point, I do have a question for you.
All right.
Regarding the end of the film, when we have our climactic moment, how does it work for you when you have the buildup to who is the person who is the mole that's going to show up in this flat after their secret meeting? And we have Smiley as he's kind of waiting and observing, and then he kind of pulls his gun. He hears the footsteps and everything, and he gets ready to kind of go into the other room. Takes his shoes off. He takes his shoes off. And then we cut to Gwillem, Benedict Cumberbatch, outside as he gets himself ready, and he runs in, and he goes into the room, and he sees the guy sitting there. He sees Smiley sitting there with the gun, and he turns and he looks, and it's Bill. Does that reveal of our big bad? Does it work where it shifts perspective right in the middle of the climactic, chase for you? I guess we would call it.
I knew actually that you were going to bring this up, and I knew it when I watched it because I thought this is going to be a thing that Andy's going to think about. I don't know which way he's going to fall, but I know that this movie. If this movie, I say to myself, if this movie is a movie with which Andy has quibbles, this is going to be a quibble. For me, it actually works very well. I find it incredibly powerful, and I think it's jarring enough, right? Because it allows us a physical reveal, right? It's not just the camera, cuts to Bill. It allows us to come down the stairs and kind of see as Gwillem is coming up into the room, and it allows the wall to kind of move out of the way, and then we get to see Bill sitting there in that chair, and he's kind of forlorn, and Smiley still has his gun on him. And I think that it ends up sort of, to me, I think the secret sauce here is in just how jarring it is for me to move from upstairs to downstairs. It is a broken sort of rule that I think works very effectively here. Does it hold up the end for you?
I don't know. It's like I'm kind of torn on it because I think it works, but at the same time, I can't help but question the reason. And I guess for me, it's just I haven't landed on in my head a reason that Alfredson would have gone this route instead of the other route. Because normally you would be with your hero as he kind of has that final moment with the protagonist or the antagonist and catches him, and you'd see him sneak down the stairs and pull the gun on Bill with the Russian that he's meeting in this room. And you'd have all of that. You'd see the reaction on Bill's face and everything. You don't get the reaction on Bill's face. He's already been caught. And so when Gwillem comes in, it's really the reaction on Gwillem's face. As, and because it's just one of those weird things, because it's honestly like, it could have been any of them. This is not a red herring sort of film like an Agatha Christie where you can work backward and puzzle piece it where, okay, it could be this person or it could be this person. Like I don't know. I guess I don't feel like there's not clues that have been left behind where on multiple watches you can go, oh, I can see why that's where Bill did this and left that, It doesn't work that way. It's just he's doing it because it's not a reveal that came from any big surprises. I don't know. I guess I struggle with the fact that he did it, and I don't understand why more than anything else.
Well, and when you say he here, you're talking about Alfredson?
I'm talking about Alfredson. Right. Yeah. Why did Alfredson decide to construct it this way? And you brought up a valid point that I liked, the fact that maybe it was to build some more tension in, because now we're kind of coming in a much more aggressive attack with Gwillem. I don't know.
Well, an aggressive attack, but also an incredibly subdued reveal, which I think, to me, fits the tone of the film more accurately than a surprise kind of jump scare attack or, gotcha moment, right? None of this movie is about a gotcha. There is nowhere in the DNA of this movie that indicates we're going to get a gotcha. That it's all about sort of the complexity of multiple vectors of approach to a nefarious element. And I feel like the way he just sort of stifles the instinct for the gotcha moment it absolutely fits the tone and tenor of the film, and and I don't think it takes away, to my eye, it takes away of any of the satisfaction of the fact that we caught and have identified the central mole. But more important than that, right? It allows us to get to what I think is the real celebration of victory of this movie, which is, seeing what happens to Bill after he's caught, right? As he is imprisoned and as Smiley confronts him, or actually just visits him in his cell. And finally, the confrontation, I should say, not even the confrontation, right? The final sniper shot, when we get to see Jim Prito come back from the woods and take care of this last little bit of business.
After he boots the boy out.
Well, okay. First of all, he has some real questionable behavior when he comes back from hiding. What business does he have teaching that kid to drive at that age? He's not of driving age, even if he's in a soccer field. There were too many children around there.
You should question your teacher when the first thing a new teacher does in the classroom is kill a bird.
You should. Yeah, you should do that.
Is this somebody I should look up to?
No, he's not great.
No,
he's not great.
No, I mean, all of that is, I think it makes sense. I feel like in the mini series, I'm trying to remember. I felt like Bill was a little less, I don't want to say he's apologetic here, but he seems a little like, once he's caught and everything, it's like he's feeling like, yeah, I know, I just kind of did it. And like he's not completely apologetic, but he's a little more like, it wasn't, I guess he feels like, he made some choices and he's acknowledging maybe they weren't right, and then he gets killed by by his friend. In the original one, I felt like he was pretty aggressively changed. Like, he's like, yeah, I made a choice. Communism was better, and that's the side I'm on, and you're wrong. And I felt like it was a little harder edged. I don't know. I'm a little. I guess it still works fine. I guess I don't have an issue with the way that it's played here with Colin Firth and everything.
Which part? The way
at the very
what's
end,
played
like
here.
At the end when he's like, did you
the,
feel
just
he's
that
like
Firth
real
is a little bit,
apologetic and
yeah. Like you feel like, and I can see that you feel like he is, and I don't mean the royal you, that you start to feel like, okay, he was taught a lesson. And that becomes the vindication of the film. And that's not what I want. And that's not what I walked away with personally. What I want is, here's a guy who believed strongly that he was doing the right thing for his own sort of worldview. And he got caught doing it in the context of others' worldviews that disagreed with that. And he will be punished for it. And that punishment is, what his colleague is going to take him out before he's discovered by the Russians. And I understood also that there's some undertone around the fact that perhaps they were gay, which is and that he was actually doing his former lover a favor, and also that sniper shot was exceptionally well executed. That was amazing. It was fantastic. The shot right into the cheek, and then the next time we see him, you see him. It's just horrifying. He's down on his face, and you see what has happened to the back of his head. And I thought it was an incredibly powerful emotional moment in the film. And in a movie that has so muffled the emotional intensity, I thought that was a truly powerful moment in the film.
Yeah, no, it's really strong. And also different from the miniseries. And again, I can't speak for the book, but I mean, in the miniseries, he just gets shot. You don't have that moment where they're looking at each other, where Bill looks up and he happens to catch Jim off in the woods and kind of looks at him like he knows what's about to happen and acknowledges it and doesn't try getting away. He just stands there. Which I guess works for me. I guess I don't have any issues with that. It's just an interesting way to play that scene where he sees him, acknowledges it, and stands strong.
Really powerful.
Stands strong, opposite Mark Strong. Yeah. It's terrible.
Yeah.
We kind of skipped over this, but I wanted to just, as far as the development of this project.
Yeah.
So Peter Morgan had actually started working on this on a screenplay back in the aughts, I believe, and he was hoping to, I guess he must have had a deal with Le Carré at that point, offered it to Working Title Films to produce it, but then he had personal reasons, ended up dropping out of the project. I don't know what that was. Still was on it as an executive producer. And then that's when Working Title hired Peter Strawn and Bridget O'Connor to work on the script. And what a great job they did. I don't know much about the two of them, but they've done stuff that I'm familiar with, like The Debt, which I really enjoyed, The Men Who Stare at Goats, How to Lose Friends and Alienate People, Frank, The Snowman, The Goldfinch. So they're behind some interesting stuff, some stuff that may not be as strong. I don't know. I find it very intriguing, and that's actually more of Peter Strawn. Yeah, Bridget O'Connor's much less stuff, but
when you look at Strawn, and he ended up writing, he wrote The Snowman, which was in then another film that Alfredson made. It looks like he's a partner in filmmaking.
Yeah, and I mean, Bridget O'Connor, she died before the film was even released. She had breast cancer, and ended up, she died in September 2010. So I don't know. She had worked with Peter Strawn on 66 and Mrs. Ratcliffe's Revolution, but then that was it, and then she died. So it was very, very kind of tragic.
That is tragic.
Anyway, so they were working on the script. And then this is interesting. Park Chan-wook actually started considering directing this. He ended up turning it down. And which, I mean, we already brought it up. He ended up jumping back into the Le Carré world with his miniseries adaptation of Little Drummer Girl, which is pretty great. And then Alfredson came on and off they went.
I don't recall. Yeah, Peter Strawn also wrote Frank. I don't recall your opinion of Frank.
I enjoyed it. I didn't love it. I thought it was enjoyable.
That was it. Nope, stop. No, I don't need to hear anymore. That's just going to disappoint me.
I didn't say, meh.
Meh. Okay. Noted. All right. Hoyt van Hoytema is behind the camera.
Oh, can we do one more story thing that I want to ask you about before we jump into crew?
See what I got.
The miniseries and the book go into the whole thing about the children's rhyme, where the title comes from.
Sure.
And I don't recall. I know that Control gives everybody their nicknames, but does he ever go through the whole thing because I was like, it's interesting that it's not in here and he's just giving these code names without any reference, and us Americans who have no idea what this English children's rhyme is really have no clue where he's pulling it from. But it's Tinker, Tailor, Soldier, Sailor, Rich Man, Poor Man, Beggar Man, Thief. That's the little rhyme. And in the we do hear him say, we'll leave out Sailor since it rhymes with Taylor. We'll skip Rich Man because it doesn't really fit any of these people.
Right.
And so it's interesting that they leave that in, but they don't really give us the actual rhyme. I don't know.
I wonder how much of that we just need to know, because this is a movie that is so celebrating kind of classic British spy moviedom, and I feel like this is an in-house. It's kind of an in-house cultural joke that that we don't get to. We just don't get to know.
You don't need it. You don't need it. But But I do like hearing the whole thing.
Well, if people listen to the end of our shows anymore, and I think it's highly dubious that anybody does. But I think it was last week's Amazon review, you actually read one that talked about this movie as Soldier, Tinker, Tailor Spy.
That's right.
I don't know if you remember Randy, your fellow Randy came and spoke to us. And I thought this was really interesting because I, too, looked up a little bit of the background on the rhyme. And it turns out that the similar rhyme to the original was found in The Game and Play of the Chess, circa 1475, in which pawns are named laborer, smith, clerk, merchant, physician, taverner, guard, and ribald. And the first record of the opening four professions being grouped together is in William Congreve's Love for Love, which has the lines, "A soldier and a sailor and a tinker and a tailor had once a doubtful strife, sir." I think I wonder if
into a bar.
If that would have been better. No, you're right. I take it all back. There was a bar. Anyway, soldier, tinker, tailor, soldier, super spy. There we go. Hoyt van Hoytema.
We like him. We talked about him, didn't we, with Dunkirk? Did we talk about him?
Well, because he's just a guy that likes to carry heavy things on his shoulders. That is what I remember more than anything else. Like,
it's really Interstellar, Spectre, Dunkirk, all of this stuff. He's very...
He's an oaf of a man. He's a Hagrid. He's Hagrid. He's a giant, and if there is an IMAX camera, he will have it on his head. That is what we know. And yes, he's behind Dunkirk and Interstellar, and don't forget Sad Dad Astra, as our friend Tommy likes to call it, and Let the Right One In.
Yeah, right. He is Swedish/Dutch.
Yep.
So
yes.
So he has been around with Alfredson for a while.
Yeah. And I think he did a terrific job. I really do. I think it's just a very different kind of film, and I think he proves here that he can shoot, he can make these more stoic kind of images just as interesting and compelling on screen as Dunkirk.
Well, that's the thing that really struck me is how patient the camera work was, just like Smiley. Very kind of, it reminded me actually, it felt like the camera work, like it felt very much in pair with The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, with the longer shots and just the nice pacing, the way that the camera really lingered. It worked really well in this particular case.
How about Alberto Iglesias behind the score?
Good old Alberto. What a score. Just beautiful, bluesy. And again, gosh, just exactly what I just said with Van Hoytema's cinematography, feeling very much a part of Spy Who Came In From the Cold. Man, does this score do the same thing. It just feels so beautifully bluesy and just kind of this sad jazz feel to the whole thing. It just fits so nicely right in line with the whole thing.
No, it really does. And if you go back to the other scores that we've already talked about, I think that just did so well, especially Spy That Came In From the Cold. I think that it just really creates that spirit of celebration of the genre by the way he just sort of uses the same kind of instrumentals, the same strings, the same horns in just a new and really inventive way for this movie. I think it's a really easy score to listen to.
He is a fantastic composer. I mean, the music that he just did this year for Pain and Glory, he's done a lot of Almodovar films, but just listening to the music there, just really, that's a great score. I really enjoy that one.
Well, we can go back. Constant Gardener, Kite Runner,
right?
Incredible scores.
Le Carré.
Right.
Yeah.
Just incredible scores.
Yeah.
What do you know about sequels and remakes? Are we ever going to get another miniseries of this?
Well, I don't know about another miniseries. We did have that first one, and it's a 3-part one. They made the first one, the third one, Smiley's People, with Alec Guinness. Mm-hmm. They have talked about adapting a sequel of the books to this film. They never said if it's going to be The Honorable Schoolboy or if it's going to be Smiley's People, but they have been talking about it, and it's been very much a back and forth sort of thing. I think right away with the popularity of this, they started talking about it, but it never came to play. Gary Oldman at one point said that the talk had disappeared, but he still is really interested. I think, once you're Smiley, I think you want to keep playing that role because it's an exciting role to play. And then a couple years later, he said, you know what, there's a script. I don't know if we're going to shoot, when we're going to shoot. That's where we are. So fingers crossed that somebody has the cojones to figure out a way to make it, because I'd love to see more of this world with Oldman as Smiley.
Well, I'm pretty excited about it. And having never seen the Guinness stuff, turns out Goldman is my Smiley. See what I did there?
Nothing wrong again. With that.
I love it. How'd it do at award season?
Really well. 35 wins, 99 other nominations. At the Oscars, Gary Oldman, this was the year of The Artist. Let me just tell you, you're going to hear a lot of that as I go through this. Gary Oldman was nominated for Best Actor, lost to Jean Dujardin for The Artist, which that film also beat Alberto Iglesias for original score. And it lost adapted screenplay to The Descendants. So... I really like The Descendants, but it's funny. I get why, and I know this was a popular in conversations at the time, why The Artist would win Best Score, because it's a silent film.
Yeah,
the entire thing is score. There's a lot of music in it, but still, God, the score is just so stinking good. I really struggle with all of those. Especially Gary Oldman, though. I mean, I really felt at the time that Gary Oldman should have won, and I guess it speaks to sometimes how they pick, because it's no surprise that he ended up winning when he played Winston Churchill, much bigger role.
Right. Of course, this was one that I had not seen when the Oscars came out. I had not seen it at the time. I didn't see it until later, and so I had seen The Artist, so I was fine with it.
Yeah, I mean,
I'm with you now, though. I regret that.
It's a tough year, though, because Demian Bashir was nominated for A Better Life, another beautifully quiet performance.
Yep.
George Clooney in The Descendants, I really liked him there. And this is the one I think that you would probably go with, Brad Pitt and Moneyball.
Yeah, you're right. That's the one I was going to be mad at. Now I'm enraged again. It rises up in me.
Bringing it all back. Anyway, over at the BAFTAs, this was a British story. It won for the Alexander Korda Award for the Best British Film. It lost the actual Best Film to The Artist, which it also lost Best Film Music, Jean Dujardin for the Best Leading Actor, Cinematography, and Costume Design and Director. It did win for Best Adapted Screenplay, and it lost editing to Senna, and it lost production design to Hugo and sound to Hugo. So it got a couple wins in the BAFTAs. A couple last ones. The Alliance of Women Film Journalists. I just wanted to read this one because, let's see, Adapted Screenplay lost to Moneyball and The Descendants, but the EDA Special Mention Award at the Alliance of Women Film Journalists, they gave it the award for Movie You Wanted to Love, but just couldn't. I was like, wow. They're terrible to give awards for things like that.
Wow.
What are they, the stinkers?
I just don't understand why.
And then at the World Soundtrack Awards, at least this was good because Alberto Iglesias did win the Best Original Soundtrack of the Year and the Soundtrack Composer of the Year for this and The Monk and the Skin I Live In. So he won some for that. But yeah.
Movie you wanted to love but couldn't. That's going to stick with me.
What's up, Alliance of Women Film Journalists?
Right.
Terrible.
Bitter.
I know.
Okay, so how did it do at the box office? Did it win big?
Well, Alfredson's adaptation of this story had a budget of $21 million, which seems pretty low for a period piece. Spent it well, I guess. That's about $23.9 million in today's dollars. The movie was released in the UK September 16th, 2011, then worked its way around the world over the next year. It opened in the States in limited release December 9th, 2011, opposite New Year's Day and The Sitter, as well as the limited releases of Young Adult and We Need to Talk About Kevin. This movie opened in spot 21, though it had the highest per-screen average of the weekend. It went wide in the U.S. January 6th, 2012, where it moved up to 9th place for the weekend box office, which it never ended up beating. The movie did end up grossing $24.1 million domestically and $57.3 million internationally for a total adjusted gross of $92.85 million. That leaves this Le Carré adaptation with an adjusted profit per finished minute of $538,000.
Well, that's not so bad, Andy. You could take that to the bank.
Made the money back. Yes,
and pay people for their hard work.
And they did, yes.
Well, this was a real treat, and I think it's it's another one that just entices me. It excites me to go explore some more Le Carré, and as we wrap up this another very brief series on his works, 2 wins and a trash.
I definitely have. I've really enjoyed his stuff because it is the anti-James Bond. It's such a thinking man's way of telling these stories. And don't get me wrong, I love James Bond movies too. But there's something about the way these stories unfold that I find really just engrossing. So I enjoy it, and I definitely look forward to catching more John le Carré as I kind of continue.
Well, I'm very excited to see what happens when we take this to Flickchart.
Definitely. Let's do it.
Head over to flickchart.com/thenextreel and you'll see all the movies that we've talked about on this very show. You swipe over in your show notes and tap the word Flick Chart. It will take you to this very movie, and you can add it to your list and see how it stacks up against ours. It's pretty high on my list, Andy. I'm pretty high.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Well, first up, we have Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or Chronicle.
Tinker Tailor.
Boy, I sure like Chronicle.
Soldier Tinker Tailor Spy.
Soldier Tinker Tailor Spy. I'll go with Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy. Next up, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or Rocky Balboa. Oh, Tinker Tailor, please.
Soldier Tailor Spy Tinker.
TTSS or STII. That'll be Star Trek 2.
Star Trek 2. I would go Tinker.
Star Trek. Really?
I would go. Yeah, I would.
I'm Star Trek.
All right. You can have it.
I'm
You can have it. It's okay. It's okay. I don't even want to fight about it. I just wanted it out there.
You just wanted to be on the right, as you always say.
Yeah.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or The Shining.
Tinker, hands down. No qualms. Take it to the mat.
Boy, I am really torn on this one. I'll go with you, but boy.
With regrets?
No, not with regrets. I just feel like any given day I could easily flip that.
Yeah.
Oh, we didn't even mention John le Carré was in it.
Yes, he was. He was a guest at the party. Yeah.
I'm saying that because the poster that came up on Flickchart, which I didn't even realize, it has a poster with John le Carré. You know, it's like the character posters, and you have
and
Smiley
it's John le Carré
and the Gwillem and the Hayden and all the different characters. Yeah. And there's a John le Carré. I've never seen the author get his own movie poster in the style of everyone else.
That's brilliant.
Just bonkers. All right. Anyway, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or Spirited Away. Oh my.
Tinker.
I'm going to say Spirited Away.
Okay. We can do this. We'll duel this one.
Okay.
All right.
Here we go.
1, 2, 3.
Rock.
Scissors. Oh, Andy.
Spirited Away.
Well done.
Takes it. Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or Kramer versus Kramer.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
I think they should have named it Tinker versus Tailor versus Soldier versus Spy versus Kramer versus Kramer.
Unrelated, adjusted loss per finished minute of...
which one did you go with, Tinker Tailor?
Yeah, TTSS.
Oh, man, these are so hard right now. I feel like I'm leaning toward Kramer versus Kramer.
I'm not a child of divorce, man. I just don't have it.
Is that the point I turned? As soon as my parents got divorced, I knew Kramer versus Kramer was the one for me.
It's your movie. Yeah.
I'm going to say Kramer versus Kramer.
All right, let's do it again.
Let's do it. All right. Battle. Okay, here we go. 1, 2, 3. Rock.
Scissors. Oh, Andy, you've been going to school.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or Double Indemnity. Oh, Double Indemnity for me.
Double Indemnity. The line must be drawn here.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or The World's End. WTF, Gary?
So I introduced my kids to Shaun of the Dead and Hot Fuzz this weekend.
Oh.
We didn't get to World's End, but it's coming.
It's coming.
I'm going to go
World's End.
I'm going to say World's End.
Yeah.
Go, Edgar. Go on. You have it.
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy or Misery? Ooh, wow. I'm going with Misery.
Really?
Yeah.
I think I'm Tinker.
Okay.
Yeah, all right. Here we go.
We can do it again.
Yeah, let's do it again.
Here we go. 3. Oh, sorry, I'm counting backwards. 1.
What?
Which way am I going? 1, 2, 3. Scissors.
Andy, every time.
Look at that.
Oh,
today was
back.
my day. All right, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy ended up in spot 84 on our chart. 84 out of 447, which puts it at that didn't do it. Which puts it at an 81%.
81%. Now, I know that you have already reviewed this movie on Letterboxd. I have not read your review. I have withheld, but I did happen to notice your star rating on Letterboxd, and I carried that baggage with me in silence, mourning in silence, this whole last hour that we've been together. You gave it a 4-star over on Letterboxd, and that leads me to believe that this is not in the top 90% on your flick chart. Is that accurate? Could that possibly be true?
You want me to reveal it before you tell me yours, or do you want to?
There's no surprise to mine. It's a 57. It's a 5-star. It's a 96%. I have no qualms. I deeply love this movie, and I have no quibbles. No, at no point did stars fall off. They just, if I could have taken more stars, this is a 7-star movie.
I'll be honest. I watched this movie And I was like, oh, that's an easy 5-star film. And then I went and looked at my rating and I was like, 4 stars. And I was really perplexed by my own thinking. I'm like, what was I? And I didn't read what I wrote last time. I don't think I wrote anything. I don't think I was using Letterboxd yet, but I feel like I must have just, I don't know. I don't know what my reaction
Andy,
was from.
Please allow me.
Did I actually write it?
Lots of complexities and intricacies going on in this script. Really pay attention, period. Gary Oldman's performance should have seen him walking home with his first Oscar. Finn.
Well, that's pretty good.
Yeah.
I mean,
I love that you actually tell the audience, really pay attention.
well, you really have to. It's funny because I was watching it this time and my wife just casually came and sat with me after doing some other things. And then she kind of sat down and very shortly after got up and said, I can't do this right now. I gotta go do something else.
I have this, it has become this it's like unintentionally passive aggressive move now where somebody walks into the room while I'm watching a movie or like, cause where I watch movies, it's like our front door is right there. And I will apparently what I am told is that my motions over the last year have gotten really big when my arm reaches up over the arm of the couch to press pause because I'm trying to send a message, apparently, really passive aggressively that people should shut up because I'm watching a movie. So I'm kind of apparently mean-spirited. That was this movie for me. Just shut up. I'm in it. I'm so in it. So.
It's a strong one. It's really strong.
Yeah.
Yeah. And this, I think.
So did you give me your flick chart?
Oh, no, I didn't. It was, it was funny because everything ranked of that 4-star because I looked at my flick chart and I was like, it was an 85%. I'm like, wow, that seems pretty low. I should just try it again just in case. And I did. And it landed in spot 270 out of 4311, which puts it at a 94%. So yeah, it's a strong one. It's a 5-star and a heart film for me.
Good. 5-star and a heart for me too. Yay.
Yeah. All right.
Strong run, except for drummer.
Strong start and finish.
And now we are finished with Le Carré.
We are.
Andy, where do we go from here?
This is going to be a nice shift. We're jumping to director Agnieszka Holland, and we're going to be looking at 3 of her films, which, it's going to be kind of a nice exploration of kind of what she's doing and some of the stories that she's telling, World War II and a couple of them. We're going to start with 1991's Europa. Then we're going to do her 2011 film In Darkness, and we're going to be ending with her 2017 film Spoor, which is a little tricky to access, but we're excited to talk about it nonetheless.
Yes, we are. When the movie ends,
our conversation begins.
Amazon giveth, Andrew.
As Amazon always doeth.
Oh, Amazon. Yeah, they do. A lot of people at the bottom of the barrel.
We have a little mix back again of some people who complain about the format.
Yes, true. Format was trouble for a lot of people. Regions are tough. We all know we are anti-region here. We have kind of a platform. We don't like regions.
Yes.
Bring down those walls. Would you like to go first?
Sure, I will kick it off. We've got a 1-star from Pat DeMills, who says, slow, boring, zzz. Boring, moves at a glacial pace. Such a waste of fine actors. Could have easily been pared down to a 1-hour movie. If the scenes of people walking slowly, swimming slowly, sitting on the couch doing nothing were edited out. If you've people over that you want to either drive from the house or put right to sleep, I'd say this is your movie.
Oh, Randy visited. Yeah, the future car salesman.
From
the future. Well, young Werner called and he had one he'd like to share.
I'd love to hear it.
He says that he said apparently that this movie was way too slow. I kept falling asleep and finally had to fast forward to see who the mole was.
Oh, Werner.
I am so delighted because I know that Werner has no patience. I know that he does. He always reads the last page of the book first. He always fast forwards because he just has no patience. If there's no angry penguins.
Angry penguins. Good times.
Thanks, Amazon. It's hard to believe we have been having in-depth weekly conversations about movies since 2011.
Oh, you're telling me. Producing this show week after week is so much fun, but it does require a ton of work behind the scenes. If you'd like to help support our efforts, one easy way is by using our Originals page when shopping for books and movies that we've covered.
Your purchases made through our links give us a small commission at no extra cost to you and allow us to keep having these great discussions.
We are highlighting adaptations from Season 9 over at our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. That's the site where listeners can purchase the source material for all of our adapted film discussions.
We had a big Robin Hood series this season, looking at 9 different versions on screen. Many were likely adapted from Howard Pyle's The Merry Adventures of Robin Hood, including Douglas Fairbanks in Robin Hood, The Adventures of Robin Hood, Disney's Robin Hood Prince of Thieves, and the 1991 Robin Hood, and Ridley Scott's Robin Hood.
Robin and Marian was specifically based on the ballad The Jest of Robin Hood.
And we really don't have too much to say about Robin and the Seven Hoods.
We talked Dead Ringers for our David Cronenberg series adapted from Barry Wood and Jack Geislin's novel Twins.
Have you checked out that show?
You know, I haven't, but I've heard great things.
2 comedies from our Steve Martin series were adaptations, Pennies from Heaven from the BBC series, and The Lonely Guy from the book by Bruce J. Friedman.
The Best Little Whorehouse in Texas was part of our Colin Higgins series, adapted from the Broadway musical.
Spike Lee brought us Black Klansman from Ron Stallworth's memoir.
And we looked at a trio of John le Carré adaptations, The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, The Little Drummer Girl, and Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy.
Plus, all 3 movies in our Agnieszka Holland series were based on books, Europa, In Darkness, and Spore.
La Cage aux Folles and its remake The Birdcage both came from Jean Poiret's original play.
We also talked about Arsenic and Old Lace and Charade in our Cary Grant series.
All of these were based on other material, and it is all available on our Originals page, thenextreel.com/originals. Every book purchased supports the podcast.
Get the full list of adaptations we've covered and start your next read today at thenextreel.com/originals.